Well, firstly, do you think it's the best Agatha Christie?
It's not my personal favourite, but it clearly is one of the best ever. I mean, it sold 100 million copies. Brownie points, so it's not only the highest-selling crime novel of all time, but one of the biggest-selling novels of all time, full stop. And you get brownie points if you can guess the second and third highest crime-selling novels. You won't get any actual gifts, but... Well, I'll tell you so as not to waste time. It's The Da Vinci Code and Umberto Eco's
Name of the Rose.
Name of the Rose. I think with this book, the reason why I think it's been so successful is because it's highly innovative. It does several things that were either firsts or the very early in the genre. So it's one of the first crime novels that has both a locked room mystery and a closed circle mystery. And we have to be correct with our terminology here. I get very red in the face when people get these things wrong, which is quite hard for a brown person to do. You can see how much it vexes me. So a locked room mystery is an impossible crime. So it could be a literal locked room or a locked island. So it's an impossible crime. And a closed circle is, of course, just a closed number of suspects, a certain number of suspects, one of them and she's managed to combine this. She's also then created this book, which doesn't have a detective. So there's no creepy old ladies in hats trying to solve this mystery. There's no Belgians solving this mystery. And the other thing she does amazingly well in this, which has come full circle now with psychological thrillers and suspense fiction, she's got a series of characters, and we get into their heads through the viewpoints, and they're unreliable. You know, we know they're harboring secrets. And when you look at psychological thrillers now, they're all about the unreliable narrators. I know they're not quite narrators in this. So I think the fact that she does all of these things, you have to just look at all the writers here today, and most crime writers will have at least borrowed one of these things while writing. I mean, I recently wrote a closed circle mystery set at an Indian wedding. It didn't quite work because there were 600 people at the wedding. Trying to kill 600 people one by one takes a long... I'm joking.
So when I went through... So I started... My first Agatha was at 11, as David said, Hercule Poirot's Christmas. And over my teenage years, I read all 66. And I only guessed the murderer in one, which is amazing when you think that even if she'd have some kind of pattern. But it's really difficult, isn't it, Sue?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, picking up what Vas said, I think that she is innovative in so many ways that I think she's established tropes that today seem obviously very established, but things like people trapped in this location, you know, that I think is a kind of thing. But also, what's odd about this novel is that all the suspects are victims. So there aren't many, you know, where all of them are going to kind of be... I mean, you obviously have some turning points in books where you have both those things. But every single suspect there also knows that they will be a victim, which I think is quite a wonderful and new thing there.
Why do you love it, Jane?
I'm still reeling from hearing Miss Marple described as a creepy old lady.
I didn't say it was Miss Marple.
Well, we all knew what you meant. I love it. I mean, I think one of the problems with this is that it made every other crime writer in the world think, I have an island book in me. And there are some very good island books, and there are some very bad island books. And I just think she wrote the ultimate, you're trapped and you have no way off this island. And you're just going to have to deal with whatever happens to you.
I was going to say, the weekend I went over some of the sort of early origins, and I gather there was a play which she may have seen, which was about a group of people and they all die one at a time. So that maybe was an inspiration. But now, having gone back and looked at it, I looked at the 1945 film on Sunday, which is kind of hilarious, actually. But I suddenly realized that's where they get traitors from, for a start.
Yes,
it's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that thing of... people always say that Christie isn't a very psychological writer, but actually, like, the psychology in it is fantastic. You have this building tension, and the way that people place their trust in one another and say, well, you're all right, you feel safe to me because this completely spurious reason for feeling at ease with somebody. Like, I know you have a gun, but I feel okay about that. And she's just very, very good at changing how people relate to one another.
Are there any tells, Suk, where you think, okay, I know she's... So, for example, early on, forgive me, if this is you'll get this in chapter 1, somebody arrives and his name is Lombard, and they say, your suitcase has the different initials on, CL. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, yes, I borrowed it from a friend. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, it's him.
Yeah.
There's certain things that set you off, right?
Absolutely. Misdirection. I mean, she's the absolute master of misdirection. And in this book, she does some other interesting things, which is she sort of head hops quite a lot, even within scenes, which is hard to do if you don't do it well. But she uses almost a script-like structure to do that. So she'll use, if you've ever read a script, you see a name, colon, and the speech. So it's quite stripped down, I think, the novel. So the plot's very relentless.
Are there things, Vaz, that she does that writers do not do now? Because this head-hopping thing, publishers seem to hate now.
Well, I mean, I've already sort of semi-argued that a lot of psychological thriller fiction does use head-hopping, but they call them unreliable narrators these days. I think what she does with her characters is, I think somebody said this earlier, maybe Bella, that they're all interesting. All of the characters, if you look at these characters, they're a microcosm of all of the people we hate most in society. Right? There's a self-righteous prick in there. There's somebody who's overconfident about themselves. There's a really loathsome guy, the one who's come back from shooting people on the continent somewhere. There's a guy who's run over 2 people, and he doesn't really seem to think much about it. So I think that's what makes us want to turn the pages, because to a certain extent, we want these people to be bumped off. We don't really like them very much, unless there are people in the audience who think a bunch of murderers are a really good company.
Right. Yeah, I'm just thinking that, of course, the other thing, Jane, the reference point is the movie series Saw, which is all about someone assembling people who he wants to kill. But that's so gory, and Agatha seems to not like a lot of blood.
I mean, she kills someone, spoilers, with an axe in this. So, somebody gets whacked over the head with an axe. I don't think she's worried about it. I think she was just trying to bring in a lot of variety into what she was doing. And she did rip through 10 very decent plots in this book.
But that's golden age crime, right? I mean, the sex and the blood and the swearing are off stage. I mean, if you want sexy time, you're not going to get it with an Agatha Christie novel.
Because the closest anyone gets to sex is saying, I'll see you in London.
But
that is it.
I was thinking about this, and I think one of the clever things about it is that very often in Agatha Christie novels, if there's a young female character, all they have to do is look a bit wan and someone proposes to them immediately. It's like, are you all right? Would you like to get married?
If we look at...
And this one has a young woman who is not in that position. It's sort of... Things have gone very badly wrong with the love affair, is what I will say about it. And it's sort of subverting that whole thing that she's done so often, where she's taken a young woman and said, here she is, she must be protected by a strong man who hopefully isn't a murderer. And this book is very different.
The 1945 movie I must recommend has got some hilarious moments in it. There's one where the guy says, poison could be self-administered. Strychnine, possibly. He could have done that to himself. But a knife in the back looks like murder. And there are 10 different killings. So I'm going to ask you in this book, which is your favourite one? And I'm just going to say mine is the first, where a guy sits down at the piano and says, everything's fine, I like crime, let's see what happens, and immediately dies, of a poisoned drink. Do you have a favourite killing in it?
Well, in as much as you can enjoy killing, I suppose...
Yes, you're among friends.
You can.
Fine.
We can admit...
All these people are very bloodthirsty.
Every character in it is immoral or amoral. So, like Vas said, you are almost looking forward to them getting theirs. And really, for them, what you really want is the confessional moment. And they all come up with their confessional moments. But I think, for me, it probably is Lombard, because I think he more than most...
Should we say how he dies? Oh, we can. Yeah, he's shot. Yeah. What about you? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
No, I mean, come on, we've got to be able to discuss it. Okay. What about you? Favourite murder in the book? Favourite means of murder? You've got poison, you've got falling ornaments.
There's one that I don't know how it's supposed to work, and she does a really beautiful little kind of clever magic trick, someone says, but doesn't explain how the magic trick was done. And I think that, to me, is probably my favourite one, because it's just impossible. but yet she gets away with it.
I think I know the one you mean. What about you, Vaz?
Well, I'm quite partial to a spot of bludgeoning.
Bludgeoning, yeah.
Yeah, like many people in this room, I dare say. So I can't quite remember which of them comes closest to bludgeoning. Maybe the falling.
The guy on the
masonry.
beach, I think.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
butler.
Yes,
the
the
butler.
general.
Yeah.
The general.
Yeah.
Are there any plot holes?
Oh, massive.
So-
oh my God.
Oh.
Huge.
Go on, Jen. What's your favourite plot hole in And Then There Were None?
I can't really
Yeah, we'd
talk
have to
about it without
reveal, we'd have to
spoilers.
reveal the
But
ending.
I do think that my copy editor would have been like, no, you're not having that one.
I'll tell you what one I think, and we can say this without spoiling it, is that the books, well, the original title is Unsayable. The second title was 10 Little Indians, correct? And that's because there was this ornament with 10 Indians. And every time somebody dies, one of the ornaments is smashed. And they work this out after 3 deaths. And I'm thinking, right, put someone behind a curtain just to watch the ornaments. Because whoever's smashing them is the killer.
But what if they're the
And that, to me, I
killer?
can't get away from that thought.
It is that in the horror movie, it's like, don't split up. Yeah. Whatever you do, don't split up.
And of
let's
course-
go in different directions.
And
Yeah.
so it's don't split up because somebody's a killer. If 4 of us stay together, we're going to be fine. And she says, I'm cold, I need to get my coat. And they should say, no, don't get your coat.
But I'm cold.
But I'm cold. And of course, yes, we know what happens. Plot holes, Vaz.
I don't know if we can reveal any of these plot holes.
I will say you won't care about the plot holes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they matter.
It could just be a small thing, like why doesn't they're on an island and there's a murderer, why not start swimming?
Well, the stories are so universal. I think one of the reasons why it's sold so well, and it's evolved over time with the titles as you've just mentioned. But I was recently speaking at an event with an Indian film director, and he'd adapted another Agatha mystery, the Sittaford mystery, into a series, and he was talking about a previous Indian adaptation of And Then There Were None. It's called Gumnam, which just means anonymous, and it's very similar, 7 people in a particular place, and they get bumped off one by one. The only difference, of course, is that every 15 minutes they get up and dance in choreographed numbers, which adds a bit of flavour to the whole. So if there's a plot hole, that's missing.
Not enough dancing, yeah.
Yeah, Agatha missed a trick there.
Yeah.
I think nowadays you wouldn't have 8 men and 2 women in your lineup of sort of typical suspicious people. We're just
And
going
the
to pretend
lack of-
that's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lack
that
of
person's
mobile
getting
phones.
murdered tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
Bludgeoning.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing about I watched 3 films over the weekend: 1945, 1966, which is the one you've seen as well, and then 2015. The 1945 one was 131 minutes, and there's 10 killings, and I'm thinking there's one every 13 minutes, and you've got to really get a move on.
Yeah.
So it's relentless. It's absolute, and the book is like that as well. There's nothing wasted there.
Absolutely not. It's fast, isn't it? And I think that's probably why you don't really spot any of the plot holes, because you are moving along so quickly with it. But that 66 film was probably my first exposure to Agatha Christie in any film. I watched that at the tender age of 10 Little Indians. And my parents just said, oh, yeah, watch that, and it's murder and mayhem and, people, as you say, being cut up with axes and everything. I thought, why on earth did they let us leave us just to go and watch that? And I think they genuinely thought a film called 10 Little Indians was a Bollywood kids movie. And did you like it? Were there good dances? Was there good songs? Yeah, it was great.
Well, I don't know if a lot of people know, but the original rhyme that's based on doesn't end with murder. So it goes through people get stabbed and drowned, etc. But the last 2 lines, the second to last one is, and then there were 2, and then that person gets shot. And then the last one is, and this last one, and then there was one, and he got married, and then there were none.
Oh, right.
Which is quite, comparing marriage to death. So, I'm not kidding, you can look this up. So,
But there are, can I reveal that there are 2 endings in different versions?
oh, okay.
Yeah, so God, this is again dangerous, but the film ends much more happily than the book, let's say. Not everybody dies. So
Yes.
I won't say any more than that.
I don't think you can improve on Agatha Christie's ending.
No,
That's
Well,
my
no,
feeling.
but she changed the ending when she adapted it for a play.
Mm.
She felt she needed the other.
The question I want to ask about it is whether, because times change, and some of it, and I referred to this thing of, stabbed in the back, it must be a murder. And there's a moment in the film where they see a body on the beach, but they only see it when they're standing right over it. It's ridiculous. Whether these whodunits now have aged badly, even this great one, Jane, because it can feel a bit like a caper.
Ooh, I think the film versions maybe, but not the book. Because I was reading the book today and I was so truly chilled by it. I mean, the way that she turns up the tension as you go through it. And you would think that when there are fewer people that it would be less tense, but it's much, much worse. Actually, the first killings, I mean, there's a lovely bit where they all I think somebody has died, and they all sort of gather around and say, well, should we have a cup of tea? And then they all say, oh, it's lovely, just really wouldn't think about the fact that somebody just died.
That's my point, is that now it seems a bit silly. That's all I mean.
I think she does it, she gets away with it because it is that desire for everything to be okay, which we all recognise and which still affects all of us. So you have this thing of, well, this shocking, horrible thing has happened, and I have no way of getting away, but I think everything's going to be all right.
Make a cup of tea.
But they they keep the tension up with that, I think, because the tea itself is dangerous.
They realise, yeah.
Yes, so even that comforting thing has to be pushed away, because you might be the next one poisoned.
There's lovely stuff, like they keep eating, they're all hungry all the time, so they're
Yes,
always
they
kind of
are.
like going to the kitchen together and opening tins and looking at one another as they spread tongue on bread. I mean, but yeah,
tongue is not an Asian food, I have to say.
I don't think it's...
I've never eaten tongue.
Yeah, I don't think you've missed anything.
Is she, all three brilliant writers, what's the secret of Agatha? Because I can't work out, she must have done it on a typewriter, and you can't really delete much, so you're probably just going from A to Z, and then you put the end and send it to the publisher. I can't even imagine that's what that's like.
You can go to a house and you can see a typewriter where she's written, I don't know if she wrote, and then there were none on it, but she's written some of her most iconic works on that. So it's a really lovely experience, especially as a crime writer to do. I think, having just reread this latest edition, which is really lovely, I could be a publicist for the publishers, because it's just so beautiful. And I hadn't read it for a long time, and a couple of things struck me, is how quickly it moves. And it's because it's quite a short novel, and Ian Rankin recently said that he thinks crime novels have become too long. I might disagree with him, not if he was here, because he's Scottish and he's tough and he'd probably kick the crap out of me, but I think the book moves with such enormous, such wonderful pace, and you just want to keep turning the pages. And the other thing, which I'd completely forgotten, is that the Loch Ness Monster gets a mention in there. I'd completely forgotten that. Is not a suspect. Doesn't get murdered, doesn't get bugged
but
off.
definitely a victim, yes.
The true mystery is the Loch Ness Monster.
But it wonderfully dates the book in the sense, in a really nice way, because we all grow up with the Loch Ness Monster mystery, and this was at a time when people still very much believed in, not that they don't now. But.
What about? I know that it doesn't have a central hero or heroine. There's no Marple. There's no Poirot. But talk a bit about your central characters that you've written. I mean, yours is Persis, your police officer who's post-independence Indian female cop who's up against it a bit, trying to solve crimes with society burdening her with all these expectations. That's not an Agatha character, is it? But presumably, I don't know, you could still might be inspired by her.
This is where we plug our own books. So I write a series set in 1950s India, just after Indian independence, Gandhi's assassination, the horrors of partition. Persis is India's first qualified police detective, and she's working with an English forensic scientist. And that series has been compared in style by the Observer to Agatha Christie, which is why I'm probably sitting here and why I get invited to talk about Christie quite a lot. It's more a sensibility. So it's written with a very cryptic with cryptic clues. It's not the blood and the swearing and the sex are off stage, as I already mentioned. It's very much about the characters and the atmosphere, and about this period in history which the British spent 300 years in India. But we never learn about that here. And the book that, the one in the series that's on sale today is called Death of a Lesser God, because it's about an Englishman who was born and grew up in India, James Whitby, and he's been convicted of murdering an Indian lawyer, and he's got 11 days left before he's hanged, and then Persis and Archie have to try and figure out whether he did it or not, because he claims that he's a victim of a form of reverse racism, that he didn't really do it. And I use these books to put a mirror onto a simple question, which is, can post-colonial societies treat their former colonizers justly? And Christie was wonderful in dealing with big social issues, you know, at a time where she went through that period of the empire ending. And to be honest, Agatha was very much in favor of empire. She wasn't an overt racist, but you know, she thought the empire could be a force for good. And then when it went away and Britain lost places such as India, she was forced to tackle that and accept that and understand that. And of course, her husband, as we know, her second husband, was an archaeologist who dealt with empire because he excavated in places where the empire had been prominent, and then ancient cultures, and bringing them in. So I try and look at some of that wonderful history that I wish that I had been taught growing up in school here about that time together, and I use Agatha's wonderful atmosphere and devices to try and tell those stories.
What an answer. Well, it's an amazing
You've
answer.
got to buy the book now. Definitely.
No, I'm just so fascinated. So to you, Jane, is that, okay, they are from a different age, these books, but they can still inspire your central character, Maeve Kerrigan, or whomsoever.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think, what I think about Agatha Christie is that she's so good at being concise, and one of the ways that she is concise is that she doesn't tell us a lot about her detectives, whereas I think we're all very much interested in our detectives and we want to explore what makes them do what they do. That's not a question that she ever delays herself with. And I mean, just talking about her typing, I don't think she liked typing very much, and her early books are really short. Murder on the Orient Express is 43,000 words long. My latest book is 120.
Wow.
So make of that what you will. But I think, you know, we like to spend time with our characters and get to know them and explore what makes them do what they do. And it's just not a question for Christie. But I do think she is brilliant at hiding little nuggets of information. You will always find the clue in an Agatha Christie, but she's so good at pointing you away from it at the same time. And I know Bella was talking about how funny she is, and I think we all try and bring humour into our crime fiction, and, you know, however we can. And one of the things that Christie does so brilliantly is that she'll give you the telling clue and then tell you a joke immediately afterwards. And once you see that she does that, then you see that over and over again, but you will never spot it.
I worked out that if she says, so-and-so suddenly looked very tired, they're the murderer. That's the line I spotted. Yeah, but it took
or
me...
they're about to keel over because they've been poisoned. I mean, is it one or the other?
Well, yes, yeah. So Suk's debut cozy crime novel is Dead and Gone, which is out last year. Now, I'm thinking here we could go to Miss Marple, couldn't we? Because of your brilliant Baker, who's at the centre of it.
Absolutely. I think, like a lot of crime writers, that I'm indebted to Agatha Christie. I think she established so much that we use, you know, as a sort of template, as an idea. I mean, in fact, one of the devices in Then There Were None is this idea of a kill list. You know, we've got 10 victims, and they're going to be eliminated one by one. And there's even a kind of symbolic, you know, little soldier statues to be removed for each one. And I've used a similar device in my first novel where they've got raffle tickets. So, you know, my chef, Mrs. Sidhu, who's from Slough, who's something of an underdog in the way that Slough is. In fact, this has been a radio show and a TV show. And I did publicity for America, and here I don't have to really explain how Slough resonates. I mean, if there's anyone who doesn't know how it resonates, put your hand up now. Yeah, we've got a really clear picture. So it's the underdog town. It's the concrete dog poop, but it sits in the golden fields of Berkshire, with Windsor Castle not far away, with Eton College, you know, stone's throw away. So I thought this contrast, and it's where I grew up, you know, this contrast was very strong for me. And to have a bustling, energetic, Marple-esque woman of her own age, you know, it's set in modern times, going out into Berkshire, sorting out posh people's problems and accusing them of murder and being embarrassed when she gets it wrong. And, triumphant when she doesn't. I thought that's a really key thing for me, because I grew up with these women. I grew up with these very strong mother figures. So we were raised by our parents, but we were also raised by all our aunties. And they knew right from wrong. They gave you a moral code, but they were also fantastic at wheedling out all your secrets. And I think everyone's got an auntie like this. It's not just Asians, but but we've got a lot of aunties like this. So everyone's our auntie, and they're all in our business. So wouldn't this make a fantastic sleuth one day?
Is it just looking back at Then There Were None? Obviously, the advantage of the olden days is that you weren't all tracked all the time on your blooming mobile phones, which makes it so hard for, to write something that's really surprising. And I went to see The Mousetrap. Again, I'll be careful with spoilers here, but very early on, someone cuts the phone line. What a brilliant... They've cut the phone line! It's just a great moment, and it's snowdrift, and mobile phones have ruined this stuff,
No, because modern day detectives are incredibly good at losing their mobile phones. So that's how we get it. All murders take place in that 1 square metre in London that doesn't have CCTV cameras.
Can I just say,
Go
on my way here today, I ran out of data on my phone. So I feel like I'm embodying the if I get murdered on the way home.
Yeah.
Or if you commit a murder.
No signal.
We only have your word for it that you ran out of data.
Yeah.
Don't try me.
Is it harder? Yeah. I mean, we saw serial killers 40, 50 years ago that I don't think we can see anymore, thankfully, because you just can't get through 30 victims without being spotted in our society.
But I would say, they had these amazing people at train stations who remembered every single passenger who had ever passed through them and would say, yes, last September, that was the guy. So we don't have that anymore. We
That's
have to rely
true.
on boring old CCTV.
Can I ask you for your favourite Agatha that's not And Then There Were None, and maybe a surprising one that's not the obvious? Actually, Jane, you've got a really surprising one.
My first...
Favourite Agatha. Your first or favourite?
Well, my favourite is... I've actually forgotten what the time is. No, my first one was Sparkling Cyanide, which is a very unusual first Agatha Christie to read. And it's
tell us about that then.
Not one of her most celebrated ones, and I love it because the victim, everyone thinks that she's killed herself because she just had the flu. And you know how you just feel like killing yourself after you've had the flu? So, genuinely, I think I was 9, and I remember thinking, really? It seems a little bit dubious. But it's very glamorous, and it's very Agatha Christie, and you would all fit in very well in Sparkling Cyanide with your lovely outfits tonight.
Okay, Vaz, your first or favourite?
Well, I came through Christie through the wonderful 90s series starring David Suchet, because my dad was a huge fan, which was always amazed me. I was telling this story to Sophie Hannah the other day at an event, because he didn't really speak English very well. He was from India originally, but he was absolutely in love with this Poirot series, and he had a very small mustache similar to Poirot. But he also somehow, even though he couldn't speak very good English, halfway through every episode, he would point at the screen and he would turn to me, and in Urdu, his native language, he would say, "That's the killer." And he would be right so often, and I could not even believe, because he couldn't possibly be following everything that was happening. Death on the Nile, that's my favourite. I love Egypt, all things Egypt. Alongside writing crime, I've spent 20-odd years writing my big literary novel set in Egypt. I mean, it's rubbish. It's about 5 million words long, so it probably won't get published. But because of that, I just love anything to do with Egypt. And
well, that is a classic
combination.
What about you, Sue?
I love Death on the Nile as well. And I think, because I loved all those Peter Ustinov.
So you liked Ustinov?
I
love
him as Poirot. I absolutely loved him as Poirot. It was just the right tone for me, genial, it was just perfect. But I think my favourite book is A Caribbean Mystery, because they're all on holiday. Who can't like a load of murders on holiday?
It's got a sort of headless body on the front cover of the one rather the opposite, a head without a body.
Oh, yes.
And I remember at 12 or something looking at that thinking, that's a bit spicy.
Oh, yeah.
The first one I read was Hercule Poirot's Christmas, and I vividly remember, because I was 11, this inscription, and I think it said to her brother-in-law James, who has said, loves her books, loves my books, she said, but has complained that there's not enough blood in them. So with this one, I've given you some blood. And part of the issue around the murder, which happens in a locked room, is there's just an enormous amount of blood. And I thought, oh, that's just brilliant. You know.
Who would have thought the old man had so much blood in him?
That's
Someone
it.
says, yeah,
That's it. All right. Well, we're nearly there. I sort of feel like I want a burning question. We didn't spoil it, did we? We didn't spoil the ending. We did. That's
There's
good.
still
You really have to read it. I mean, I
Yes,
think
you
it
must.
is
You'll enjoy it so much.
a masterpiece.
But I worry that if you read that one first, the others are, I actually think, not quite as. That's just head and shoulders. They're all brilliant, but there's something about that. I'd start with the Sittaford mystery or something like that, or.
Which is called, in the Indian adaptation, it's called Charlie Chopra something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It involves
And,
skis. I remember there's a ski.
Crooked
not to give
House
anything away.
is a good one.
Yes,
to
Mrs.
read.
McGinty's dead.
Yeah. Roger Ackroyd, yeah.
Well, we could have a whole session on that, but I think that would involve having to do a spoiler, wouldn't it? Because there's no way of discussing that without the spoiler. I was reading A Murder is Announced the other day, and it starts in this brilliant way. I'd forgotten it. And it's a local newspaper advert which says there will be a murder on Saturday at 6 p.m. at Pickett's farmhouse. And the plot hole in that is loads of people turn up. And they all turn up. I think, well, it's going to be a murder. What fun.
But you would.
And yeah, well, I suppose you would.
They didn't have Netflix.
No, they didn't. So they all turn up, and again, this is right at the beginning. The lights go out. A guy comes to the door with a hat covering his face, holding a gun. The lights go out. There's a bang. The lights come back on, and he's dead. Isn't that brilliant? As a So I don't. What about bad ones? I couldn't get on with the man in the brown suit. I didn't enjoy that. Any ones you wouldn't read?
I don't like Tuppence and Tommy. I find them really, they make me feel sick.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sort of hinted I'm not a huge Marple fan. It's not my fault. I was put off Marple by an article.
There'll be blood after this.
Well, okay, look, I'm going to say something controversial now, but the words are not mine, right? The words are from an article that I read many years ago where Margaret Rutherford, I think somebody described her as looking like a pickled bottom, which I thought was very cruel, but it sort of put me off for a bit. But
what about
I'm willing to be converted, Jane. I'm willing to be converted. I like Poirot. I fell in love with Poirot, and I just love all things Poirot.
We'll talk.
We'll talk. Okay. Thank you, A, for your brilliant outfits, and B, for paying such close attention to And Then There Were None. Thank you to Vaz and to Jane and to Suk. And we have a 5-minute break for some wine and cheese straws, and then we're back discussing the enduring appeal of Agatha. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.